Hi, and welcome to the Wise Fish Chess Academy. Another fantastic video from the GCT 2025 Super Bet Classic in Romania. And this is round four. A very instructive game from Aronian Levon that played against Jan Peter Stove from Poland. This game is just amazing. It is the Italian game, and we all know the pawn sacrifice for black in that setup. Now, this was the demonstration at 2700 level of what such a game can actually pan out to be using the activity of pieces. Differently the way Ron uh, Aronian used his activity and display to completely destroy Van Pisosov Duda through the game shortly. So it's e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. I usually play the e4, e5 systems when I'm teaching a very little players, so I just learn how to play in the center. And e4, e5 systems are quite instructive for me. So c6 have been played, bishop c4, knight f6, and we have the Italian game, two knights defense. And so this is the critical point. The knight attack on e5. Now, of course, uh, F7 is a very serious target, and it's not very easy to defend it, and that is where the black actually gives it an own sacrifice, and it's a pretty theoretical position, and black has a lot of compensation. Gets the castle, white usually gets himself stuck in the center if it's not careful. Well, these guys have got it all figured out. They've studied these things in depth. Let's see who goes on to, show what preparation that I had before the game. So B5 is the typical move. Now, of course, pawn captures, knight goes to A5, and of course, hitting the knight. And then if you just take away the bishop and retreat it, then you lose the pawn in the center. So the white goes for the B5 typical check, and this is where the black pawn sacrifice actually happens. So remember, white has already captured the pawn on D5, and so now black is set to play C6. Definitely just simply giving up the pawn for real, not trying to capture it. So C6, and then captures the pawn, winning a very, very critical tempo. Now, white plays queen F3. It's an interesting move. There's a pressure here. There is pressure uh, on F7, indirect pressure on F7. But also you cannot take the bishop because the queen is attacking the rook on A8. And so you have to be a little bit patient and figure what's going on. Another move that is typically played is actually bishop goes to D3, which actually is the top choice of the engine and has been played quite a lot in the Monster database. But hey, Queen F3 is actually very, very exciting, and I think it's number three choice, not played too much. But anyways, Queen F3 was played. Aronian plays Bishop E7, just basically ignoring everything, pass so quickly, and then this queen is still there, so White doesn't have to really get it pushed away yet. So White plays it anyway. Black castles. White plays knight c3, h6, and this is where the postmat starts. So knight goes to the center. Of course, black doesn't want to do that because it just helps white find harmony in his pieces. Knight or bishop. The time bishop might even be better. And white's pieces start to gain some harmony. So black prefers to go to the center. And if white tries to capture that knight in the center, then you get two connected pawns in the center, and you're just going to win a piece. In light of the pawn e4 from the bishop and the queen. So you can't do that. So white played knight f3. I guess his idea is to play a move like knight f5, which actually happened in the game. I think he would have castled. Although still it is tricky because f5 is coming and the same idea of e4 is coming. So white has really got himself to a funny position. The position is equal, and white is after a little bit better. But when you look at the position, it's just easier to play as black than as white. So knight goes to b4, hitting the bishop. The bishop can't move because it's protecting this the pawn on c7. The bishop goes to e4. If it goes to e4, then I mean the pawn on e5 becomes a really really serious threat. But wait. Also, he chooses to play knight f5 just to prevent any of those ideas from fusion. So knight f5, Aronian captures the bishop, captures with the queen, and he said, if you want to capture the queen, take the exchange, it's okay. But I have a lot of pressure in the center. The white's queen side is underdeveloped. The bishop on c1, the rook on a1, and so on. All these pieces haven't yet moved. So exchanging pieces is not really helping so much. And in the end, still, you're going to have a bishop or knight hanging on f5, which you need to protect. Bishop can go to a6 and really prevent you from casting on the king side. So the game is actually becoming quite messy for white. White is still better. So captures, and yes, as you expect, white advantage is actually increased. So Duda, Jan, this is always actually playing well. Knight goes back to e3, and this the computer does not finds it a little bit inaccurate. Actually, the computer prefers knight d6, where at least you're hitting on the bishop, and you can also hold onto some critical squares. So some of these pawns are moving, but at the same time, you're hitting on the bishop. So this is not just a dominant and defensive move. So when you play this, f5 comes immediately. This is the idea. When you play it here, then you're just getting it into direct attack, and you're going to lose a lot of tempo in the next move or so. And I think this is where Zhang began to really sway off the line. Please note the game is still equal up to this moment. So b3 was played, f4 like we expected. The tempo on the knight. Knight goes to d1. Or just imagine that move. Knight e to d1 reminds me of the famous games between Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov. In many of the games, Kasparov would do this to Popov, and Popov's pieces would really rearrange themselves on the back line, and Kasparov would get mating attacks and all kind of crazy things. And when I saw this game, I used to feel sorry for Popov. It was really weird. Pieces will go back and still get checkmated anyway. So anyway, knight e to d1 has been played. Knight to c6. Now it's heading into b4, d4 squares. Now you can see the knight pawn on c2 is weak. So what is going on? So b2 goes to a3. Of course, when the knight comes to attack the pawn, then the rook will come. The knight goes anyway, sacrificing the pawn on c5. Now, of course, you cannot take the pawn yet because of direct fork. You lose material. So he defends it. And he does not defend this pawn at all. He just going to use rook f6, double exclamation mark, triple exclamation mark, quick choice move with the angel. What happened? You captured that bishop. Happens here. Rook goes to g6. Now what can you do? Will you if you take it into d4, again, your knight is really having problems like those. And the problem with white is that his pieces cannot move. The rook on c1 is really ugly. The knight on d1 is really ugly. The knight on e2 is defending the king. Now look at these bishops. Just take a look at what's happening here. Look at these bishops. Look at the other bishop, which can just fling on either side of the board and get all kinds of ideas. I mean, there's so much that is going on. Then the other rook on a8 is going to come and join in the center, or even join from the f5, and create so much pressure on the king. But right now, the position will be so big, minus 1.5 with the evaluation of the so you can see he had to avoid that and did not take that pawn at that moment. So after rook f6, knight went to b1. You can see he's really struggling for where to put the knight. Rook goes to g6 anyways. King goes to f1. Then f3 happens. Now again, this division is very, very wild. So g3 was played. Bishop f5 hitting on the pawn. Now captures the pawn. Now Knight M6 was played a bit of an inaccuracy. Black needs to coordinate all these pieces. And he just missed a very fantastic rook to C8, which is very, very hard to deal with. But now all black's pieces, and the bishop, uh, yeah, on D8, have really found good places to be. So this would happen. Bishop captures, and then e times d4, and then knight goes out by force, then rook comes down, and the game really becomes funny. Look, the black is losing all his pawn, but the bishops are simply too strong, and you lose a piece. So this is how bad it would get. So he couldn't play that. So we go back to the so he decided to take rook knight times c2 instead of rook to c8. And then a4 was played, h4 was played in best policy to release the position a bit. Then the rook now went to c8. Bishop takes the pawn, bishop attacks the knight, and really white is struggling to find harmony in these pieces. Now, black was 2 pawns, 3 pawns down, not too many moves ago, but now has been able to capture all of them back, and now it's just down by 1 pawn. And it's still going on. So he keeps on attacking the pieces. Black, white cannot really do so much, defending his bishop move after move, and keeps on capturing. And now the 2 pawns support each other. Now just look at black's position. He still has very many moves to get his king away, yet he has to because this rook is dead. Just dead rook here. It can't really go anywhere. So if the bishop comes to f4, the rook captures, now black is officially at the pawn, king tries to move, but it's a little too late. E3 is played, and you cannot take it because the knight's going to take it, and then you have other checks and so on, and then the ropes go down, exchange it down by quite a bit of material. So Duda couldn't play that. This one is if you actually take it. Um, uh, there's actually even knight e1 threat, and this is actually more devastating because you're losing the rook. So essentially, it's not even playable. So after the pawn moved there, then the d4 was played a very desperate move, and the pawn moved forward. King with rook just steps away from the pin. H5 was played. King g7 to just remove any threats, and then find a rook a8. Now, of course, the game is over. Total Zug's won. There's nothing there. The next move that black is going to play is rook goes to d1, and the game is totally over. There's no way to prevent the pawn on e2 moving to e1 and becoming a queen. And in that light, this is called Duda, #1 of Poland resigned. And the Grandmaster from America, Grandmaster Levon Aronian, with a masterpiece in this setup, the Italian game, 4 nights variation. So we thank you for viewing. I hope you are enjoying the video. Continue to subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Have a good day. Bye bye.